Winning doesn't always mean being first. Winning means being better than before. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to your favorite weekly podcast, Refreshing the Idiotic. It's your girl Hana as your host today, and today's episode is all about schizophrenia. Let's roll the intro music. The question for this week's episode is, who's your favorite writer? So I know that not everybody likes to read. I'm just a huge bookworm. I always have been, and I probably always will be. So if you don't have one, you can let me know who your favorite screenwriter is or anything. Somebody who creates fan fiction. Mine would have to be J.K. Rowling because her story to me is so inspiring. So she always knew she wanted to be a writer, which is quite similar to me. I've always kind of known. She used to write little short stories for her younger sister, as I used to write them for my little cousin. I still do sometimes, not always. But yeah, before Harry Potter even became a thing, she was diagnosed with depression. She was in an abusive relationship. She was homeless for a little bit. She was kind of stuck trying to feed her and her 2-year-old daughter. And she was kind of stuck, but she still managed to pull through. And then on top of that, when she actually got into the writing industry, she was often told that she had to go by a male name so that people would want to do book deals with her. And then Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone got denied a whopping 12 times, and she still kept faith for it. I love that story. It's so inspiring to me. So for today's episode, like I just mentioned, we're doing schizophrenia. So I'll be talking about definition, symptoms, types, media examples, and then treatments. Definition. So it's a brain and behavioral disorder that affects how you think, act, and feel, making it sometimes harder to see the difference between reality and fantasy, trouble making decisions, and maybe seeing or hearing voices. I know that when people think schizophrenia, that's the first thing that they think of. As for symptoms are usually seen between the ages of 16 and 30 for people that have schizophrenia, but it can always differ and change. So the symptoms in everybody varies, but there's 3 main branches of symptoms you usually fall into, and then these 3 symptoms are translated into the different types, which there are 5 of. So the first one is positive symptoms. These ones are hallucinations, delusions, or inner voices / psychosis. So when you're hearing things, or if you are seeing anything. The next group is negative symptoms. So this one is the loss of functioning or motivation. You have lost your expression, and then can also be seen as laziness or depression because people don't fully grasp what's going on. The third and final type of symptoms is cognitive symptoms. So these are the people that have problems with paying attention or your memory span. The people that have this type of symptoms usually have the hardest time living a quote-unquote normal life. Let's get into the 5 main types of schizophrenia. So there is a couple more, but these ones are the main overarching branches of schizophrenia, so these are the ones that I'm mentioning. The first one is paranoid schizophrenia. This used to be the only type, and it's also still the most common. It's the one that we think of mostly, where somebody has schizophrenia, you automatically decide to think that they're seeing things or hearing voices. This is kind of where that comes from. This is the one with the positive symptoms, so delusions, hallucinations, trouble concentrating, and maybe possibly delayed speech. The next one is disorganized schizophrenia. So this one, as the words may say, disorganized speech and behavior. There's also the flat effect, which is when you're completely a monotone. You don't really have, or you don't really display those emotions when you feel them, if you were to feel them. So your voice is dull and lifeless. You have trouble understanding other people's emotions, trouble speaking, and doing other regular day activities. Your thoughts may be all over the place, so it'll be hard to think of coherent thoughts. The third type is undifferentiated schizophrenia. So this one is the one where you're seeing a mixture of different types of schizophrenia. So this one has both negative and positive symptoms. It's a mixture of paranoia and disorganized schizophrenia. The fourth type is residual schizophrenia. So it's basically somebody who is diagnosed maybe a couple years ago, or is diagnosed very, very late. So they have the symptoms, but they're less severe now. Often with this one, I know it's a mixture of both, but the more negative signs like to shine through, so that flat affect, delayed speech, poor hygiene, and psychomotor difficulties, which are like skills like hand-eye coordination, like playing around, throwing balls, driving, typing, etc. And the fifth type is catatonic schizophrenia, which happens because of other psychiatric conditions like bipolar disorder. So maybe you're mimicking other people's behaviors, not seeing anything, or spur-like behaviors. So it's a condition where you're like only responding to pain. So you don't respond when somebody's talking to you, but you'll respond like if you get hurt somewhere. And then that's basically it. So the rest of the time you're monotone, or you have the flat affect, as I mentioned earlier. And those were the 5 different types of schizophrenia. Next thing I wanted to get into was media. I have 2 media examples. So the first media example I have is Mona Vanderwall from Pretty Little Liars. As I can tell, this hasn't been like an exact thing that I was able to find. I found that she does have a form of schizophrenia. I just couldn't find out which one it is. And through my research, if I had to pick a type of schizophrenia that I thought she had, I would say it's undifferentiated schizophrenia. So the third type. This one shows signs of both of the different types, so paranoia and disorganized. So my reasoning behind this is that she does show both types. Like, if you've watched the show before, then you've seen that she does have, like, the towards other people, like, she'll think that she's seeing somebody who's not alive, or she'll be talking to somebody who's not actually in the room. But then again, she also has, like, a very flatline effect when her friend, kind of, I guess, frenemy, Hana Marin, comes in to stop and visit her in Radley Sanitarium. So she'll completely just space out. She won't talk to anybody, or she won't talk. It'll be like she's looking through a wall and she's not actually there. The second media example I have is the 2017 movie Feed. It's about the 2 twins, Olivia and Matthew, who were in a car accident the day before their senior year arrived. Basically, there's a mixture of very heavily anorexia eating disorder and schizophrenia. So what happens is they're driving either to or from a party, a back-to-school party. They get into a car accident, and Matthew unfortunately passes away. So the movie follows Olivia as she battles through not being able to eat because she's having all of these hallucinations of her brother, who's making it harder for her to eat because she can't eat knowing that he can't eat. So a couple facts. Did you know that 1 in 5 people that have any type of schizophrenia will start to feel better within the first 5 years of their first symptom? I think you can't actually cure it, but just knowing that it's manageable and it'll lessen over time is a huge help. The quicker you seek help, the better your chance is to stay well or get better, quote unquote. And then the last thing that I could say is don't focus on the stigma around it, because it might not be true. I have an episode later on coming about ADHD that I just did with a guest. It'll come out in about a month. But again, with that disorder, there's so much stigma around it, and you'll see that it happens often. There's so much stigma around mental illnesses that you don't really have to have, because they're not actually true and they're just misconceptions. As for treatments, I think the first thing you can do is learn facts about the illness, so you're actually learning true things about it. The first step that you might be taking is listening to this episode, and I think that's a huge, great first step. And then see where it goes from here. Maybe look at the research that I've linked in the description and see where you go. Learn about the disorder so you're not confusing it with the misconceptions. Another thing is you can seek support from family or your peers. Just don't isolate yourself. Make sure you're talking to people. Build a strong connection with your doctor and or therapist, because some people don't have that connection, and so when you do need help, it's kind of hard to get it because your doctor or therapist doesn't really understand you because you've been so reserved for so long. The last thing is building habits and structures, so it'll be focusing on your diet, activeness, any patterns that you might have, any healthy habits you might have, such as meditation or writing, like I mentioned in previous episodes. I think that just about wraps up today's episode. We talked about what schizophrenia is, the different types, symptoms, media examples, treatments, and a couple extra facts. I really hope you guys learned something new today, and the question of the episode, again, for anybody who does want to answer it, is who is your favorite writer, whether it be a book or a script writer. This is also my first episode away from Anchor, so unfortunately you can't leave a voice message, but I do officially have a new email, and it's refreshingly.idiotic@gmail.com, so feel free to reach out to me. And a website is also in the works, so it'll definitely start to get easier within the next coming few weeks. Don't forget to subscribe, share, rate, 5 stars only, pretty please with a cherry on top. Bye guys!